I wanted to welcome y'all to Lawyers Title. I wanted to dig deep into some title questions that you might be curious about because it's one of the most important parts of selling your home. It's the closing. I wanted to dig in with the head of sales, Christy Broussard, and she's here to talk to us about it. Also, they've got multiple locations in the Metroplex, and they've also got notaries that can close you anywhere. So don't let distance decide who you close with, because title companies are very different. I'd love to say they're all the same, but unfortunately they're not. So I'm here with Christy Broussard, who is the head of sales here at Lawyers Title. And she's going to do a little question and answer with me to give you guys information about why choosing the right title company is so important. Hi, Christy. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. I'm excited to do this with you, Jessica.
Well, let's just jump right in.
Okay.
So I have some questions right here. And the first one is, why does a realtor's title company choice matter so much?
Well, first of all, that's a great question because sometimes I don't think we always think in that way. And I think, every title company can close a transaction, right? What we're looking for, what an agent should be looking for, is the consistency and the communication and the proactiveness in making sure that things within that title search are communicated not only to the agent, but then also to the clients as well.
I couldn't agree more. You have a bad closing and by goodness, you realize how important the title company is.
I was going to say, absolutely, choosing the right title company protects everyone involved, right? It protects the agent. Most importantly, it protects the client. And it just alleviates stress that oftentimes can happen when we're purchasing homes.
I couldn't agree more. Let's go to number 2. What separates an average title company from an exceptional one?
So we kind of look at 4 pillars that we build our brand off of. One is going to be communication. I think communication is key. So things that will allow that agent to have information at times that is obviously critical, right? So time is of the essence. So the proactiveness in the communication, the responsiveness in the communication is critically important. And I think too, just having that transparency. I really hope that when an agent is working with the escrow officer, that they truly are looking at that as a true partnership and helping them really communicate everything that needs to be communicated so that that client is protected when they are purchasing that home.
I do have my favorite closers here at Lawyers, and that absolutely happens 100% of the time.
Let me add one other thing too, because I do think, experience means a lot. When we have the experienced title team behind us, then that gives us an opportunity to really tap into their expertise. And expertise happens when they have seen things over and over in the industry that they can be proactive about to get ahead of. And so a lot of things that we like to do is when an agent brings us a listing, let's say, getting ahead of some things and really communicating with that agent to find out, would there be anything possibly on this title that needs to be cured? And so opening up title, getting ahead of things, again, just reinsures that excellent service and communication and just relieves the stress of the transaction in itself.
Yes, anything that would be a bump in the road to be ahead of is just so proactive,
yes,
right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, because I think a lot of buyers and sellers don't understand the importance of title insurance.
Sure.
Can you explain that for us?
Yeah, so title insurance, I think a lot of times the consumer, the client feels like they know they need homeowners insurance, right? And so homeowners insurance protects the home. Title insurance protects the client long after the closing. And so it gives that client the right of ownership. And so it's really looking out for the interest of that client. It's looking out for the interest of that client when they get ready to sell that property. So they're 2 different things, and they're both very, very important.
What is the biggest misconception that people have about title insurance?
I think it's just what I mentioned, that most consumers, or a lot of consumers, sometimes don't realize that homeowners insurance is different than the title insurance. And again, it just goes back to the homeowners insurance protects the home, covers the home, and which is incredibly important, obviously, but the title insurance protects the title. It protects the ownership rights for that client, and that is what's so critically important.
Would that be an example of maybe there was a lien on the property?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, we had a client a couple of weeks ago that had gone on a listing appointment. She's a very seasoned agent. And we have something here that we call a property profile report. And so she always asked for one of those reports. And in that report, it showed that there was a lien against the property. And it was wonderful that she had the opportunity for us to give her that information prior to going out on this appointment, because as she was sitting there with the client indicated that there was nothing on the title that needed to be cured. And come to find out, that homeowner had had a fence installed a year or two previously, and somehow, some way, the lien came up that it was not paid for that particular service that was done on that property. And the client was able to show the agent, no, here's where we paid it. Here's the invoice. And so we were able to get ahead of that. And so I think things like that, being able to choose a title company that has information and data that can also not only help you once you go under contract, but prior to going under contract, is critically important. And so that's what we want to do when we're working with our agents, is truly be a partnership and getting ahead of the game as soon as we can on anything that might need to be cured.
I love it. What are some real life title problems you've seen?
Oh, wow. Probably the one that is, I would say, hard to cure sometimes is unknown heirs. That's difficult. And I've seen this happen before, where one heir shows up, and then, believe it or not, they're like rabbits. They seem to multiply, and that's challenging sometimes to cure. Obviously, divorce decrees that are not complete, that can be challenging. IRS liens, child support liens, anything like that. That's why it's so important that as an agent, you're having that strong communication with your client in the very beginning, and then having a partner like us in a title relationship to say, hey, these are some things that as I met with my client that we might need to get ahead of. And that gives us the opportunity then to go ahead and pull title and get those things that might be a road bump or a speed bump really cured before we even go under contract.
How early should a title company be involved in the transaction?
Again, it's going to go back to your communication with your client, really diving deep into some things that might allow us to get ahead. So it goes back to those speed bumps that might be there. Are there multiple heirs? Is there a divorce? Is there any type of lien? And sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, the client doesn't know necessarily. And so again, having a relationship with a title company that can give you what we call a property profile report that will give you that information if for some reason, the client doesn't know it. But really, I think it's just out of the gate. As soon as you know that something might be on that title that might need to be cured, that's when we want to know. We want to know immediately. So even before you go under contract, even before sometimes, the listing is done, as soon as you get that listing agreement signed, if you know that there's something that is going to be a challenge or potentially could be a challenge, let us know right away. We want to be very proactive in this.
I will say there's a current example that I have with a client, and one of the escrow officers helped do an affidavit because the family had moved and he was staying back to sell the home.
Oh, yeah.
And they did the affidavit for power of attorney, which was very helpful because it was all in-house, right? And making it as easy as possible, because selling a home, there's a lot of balls in the air that we're juggling and trying to get everything done. So to make it as simple as possible definitely is a relief.
Well, and I think you bring a very good point up too. Sometimes we just don't know, right? And I think even after you do your, meeting or your consultation with your client, once you know that you're going to continue to work with that client, I think it's a smart idea if you even reach out to your escrow officer and say, hey, I'm about to do a transaction with this client. Here are some things that we discussed. Is there anything that you think that maybe I should ask that maybe I didn't, or anything that you're seeing right now? So I think just having that dialogue from the beginning with your escrow officer is important as well, just as important as having that dialogue with your client.
So Christy, tell me, what can derail a closing that buyers and sellers would never know about?
Sure. Judgments can, tax liens can, probate, that's a really big one. Probate, HOA issues, that's another one that can derail if we don't get ahead of it, right? Wire fraud, identity issues, and then just honestly survey conflicts. That's another one that I think we don't often think about.
I saw a survey that the sellers had let the neighbors put their fence on their property, and they tried to come back and get us to exclude that part of the property in the sale. It was definitely a bit of a tangled mess.
Web
to unravel.
So what had ended up happening? Were you able to?
My clients didn't buy the property.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. That's a derail for sure.
For sure. How important is communication during a transaction?
I think it's critical. When I had the opportunity to have closings just on my personal properties as well, I really was always looking for a title company that made sure that on a weekly basis they were communicating with me, that they would send me the critical dates throughout the contract. Even if nothing changed, I just needed to know and have a reassurance that they were on track, that everything was moving in the way that it needed to move. And so, I think communication is key. Communication allows us to truly have the experience that we should have. This is one of the most exciting times in your client's life. It's one of the largest financial decisions that they're making, so it's stressful. And so if we can do things to get ahead of those and set expectations and communicate what is happening along the way, it brings clarity and just relieves the stress that they may be under. It empowers the realtor as well to be able to communicate that with their clients, because they're obviously talking to their clients more than we are. So I think it's critical. We're working with an agent that's come over to us recently. A lot of times it's because the lack of communication with the other title company. You can get ahead of that issue and ensure that communication is the way that you want it by just simply sitting down with that escrow officer and saying, this is kind of how I would like to see it. This is my expectation in terms of communication. Is this something that we can work together on? I think it's the most important thing throughout the entire process.